I hope today you've got that electric feel because we're going to be talking about something zappy, something buzzy, something boozy, something woozy, and now I'm just saying words. It is, of course, the Tesla Model S. Is this the car that history will say killed the internal combustion engine? Given that the Formula One's back, internal combustion engines are on the mind, and Formula E is still around, so electric cars are on the mind. But today, only one thing is on the mind for the next few moments, which is the Tesla Model S, how it came about, what it's like, and why I think it is the car that will go down in history as the car that killed the internal combustion engine car. So don't forget to like and subscribe, and let's jump straight into it, shall we? Hello, you are very welcome to today's installment of Car Nerd Stories, and today's Car Nerd Story is about the Tesla Model S. If you haven't watched any of my other videos, I'm going to be doing these every Tuesday and Thursday, and essentially it's a history of a car model that you enjoy, and I'm thinking about doing some other videos as well, but for the moment, keep it light and simple. And if you want to watch, you can just subscribe to the channel, and you'll see in the video section there's already over 55 videos, I think, on different car models. Some good videos, others bad videos, who cares? Now, if you're a big Tesla fan, you're probably an Elon Musk fan. You probably assume that he founded this company. However, Tesla was not founded by Elon Musk as much as he loves Nikola Tesla. It was actually founded by Marc Eberhard and Marc Tarpenning in 2003, which incidentally is the same year that the GM EV1 was axed, killed, mafiaed, whatever you want to call it.
Welcome to the electric car of the future, sponsored by the gasoline producers of America.
And if you want to hear about that story, you can click that little description up here. However, in early 2004, the company was looking for a way to get investment. You see, Marc and Martin actually came from a background of technology. They weren't just Magic the Gathering fans and investors. They also had created an e-book, e-reader, I guess you would call it, that had done quite well in 1998. So these guys were investing their money, and one thing they loved was cars, and another thing that they knew a lot about was lithium-ion batteries. So they decided they were going to try and put these two together. So they went about starting up their own car company, which became Tesla, named after Nikola Tesla, in 2003. Now in 2004, they needed $40 million investment to get the company rocking. Enter Elon Musk. Elon Musk at the time was running SpaceX and had no interest in becoming a CEO of another company. But essentially, he loved the idea of electric cars, and he was passionate about getting this going, simply because SpaceX was to move man off the planet, and he thought that electrical energy of renewable energies and renewable energy cars would be a good way to keep this planet sustainable for the time being. So he raised $6.5 million himself and invested in the company, and he led a Series A investment, pulling in an entire $40 million, and became the chairman of the board. Now, it wasn't until 2008, funnily enough, that he became the CEO, and that was because of the Great Recession. Things went pretty much, I guess the way you'd call it is foobarred or tits up, and the company needed to readjust to get itself through that time. Luckily, Obama had come into power and helped them out with some incredibly, I guess the conservatives would call them bullshit, but anyway, they got some good tax breaks. Now, moving on from just Elon Musk, around the same time from 2006, 2007 and 2008, the company had been rocking with its Tesla Roadster. This was a Lotus-based car that we'll talk about at a future date. If you're interested, pop it in the comments. If you're not, or if you are, that'd be great. And the Tesla Roadster had really put Tesla on the mark, and everyone except for maybe one motoring journalist rhymes with Marx and on Top Gear, who I'm a huge fan of, didn't like the car and ended up in some sort of legal battle with Tesla, but that's again a story for that video. But Musk was keen to use the Tesla Roadster as more of a showcase, but he really wanted to get the company to an affordable mass production car. And this was the whole point of the Roadster, was to just get an audience and get some funding in. And they managed to sell quite a few of these Tesla Roadsters at around the $100,000 mark, and this built the company some money. So it was time for them to move towards the next phase of producing a mass production car. And the easiest entry to this, given that their customer base at the moment were sports car lovers and people with a lot of money to spend on sports cars, the next obvious option was to create a high-end luxury car, because keep in mind as well that the battery and electric motor technology was still quite expensive to produce. Luckily for Elon Musk, a man by the name of Franz von Holzhausen had just been freed by resigning from Mazda, and they took him on board. This guy is an incredible designer, especially at the level of luxury cars, and he had changed the face of Mazda and how everyone looked at it by 2008. It had gone from kind of a horrible, typical cheap Japanese looking car to the luxury Mazda cars that we know today that just look incredible for their price. And Franz went on to design every single Tesla from the Model S to the ones we have today, the Y, the 3, the X, all of them. Bar the Cybertruck, I'm not sure if he designed that. But anyway, Franz joined the company in 2008 and they got cracking on their new sedan. This sedan looked very much like Fisker Karma to a point. By the time it was released, you may notice this. It definitely looks a lot more toned down and whatnot, but from a shape perspective, it looks very similar. And there's a reason for that, but I'm going to get into that on a different video about the Karman Fisker. That one. So in 2008, they started working on this incredible new car, and in a press release on June 30th of 2008, they released that the Model S would be announced within the year. And then in September of the same year, they released a small prototype of the car before doing an in-house version, before in 2009 at the Frankfurt Motor Show unveiling the prototype concept for the car, which was pretty much unchanged, a few slight differences between that and the production version. Now interestingly, the original long-range version of the Model S was supposed to be petrol powered as well. It was essentially going to be a hybrid. They wanted to do a long-range version, but Musk was heavily against this. The team wanted it to happen, but Musk was having none of it. And in that Going Green conference in September of 2008, he said that Tesla would never produce anything that was not a full electric vehicle, and it turns out that was the right bet, because that has really worked out for them to date. Although unveiled in 2009, with the eventual production version completed by 2010, it would be another 2 years before this beautiful, glorious luxury car would get into the hands of customers. And the reason for this was, one, the factory. So in 2010, the original idea was to maintain a factory in Albuquerque, New Mexico, and do all of the production of the Model S there. Unfortunately, this didn't pan out. It would have been great for the company because this would have given them a central shipping location. But unfortunately, this didn't work out for them. So they kept on looking and looking and looking until eventually in late 2010, they found the old NUIMM building in Fremont, California, which is where they produce the Model S still today. And it is indeed their headquarters, apart from Hawthorne. No Hawthorns for SpaceX. Musk has too many jobs. Far too many jobs. So with a lot of delays then after they found the factory, because this was an entirely new type of car. You've got to keep in mind that mass producing an electric car up until this point was something that the big companies couldn't do. And this is a fledgling startup. Sure, they'd been around nearly 10 years, but it's still nowhere compared to Chevrolet, Ford, Mercedes, and so on, who, by the way, are only now really catching up to this. The car being released, let's talk about the actual car itself. What had they created? So from a design perspective, this car is stunningly beautiful, but it's not anything incredibly unique. It's a very, very, very pretty sedan car, but it doesn't look anything more unique than, say, a Mazda, for example. I don't know why I said Mazda, you can probably assume. But it is a pretty car, and I guess it was designed in a way that it would hold its looks for quite a long time, because even now, 10 years on from it being fully announced, it still hasn't changed very much. They've just lightly updated it over the time. But it is a sleek looking car. The original concept looked a little bit like a Maserati Quattroporte, but very, very much toned down. And apart from some rear light changes, some front light changes, a bumper change, and the way the vent looks now on the new car, it hasn't really changed much. But it is a beautiful car, and this was the whole point. It was supposed to be understated, because if you make something really, really unique like the 2006 BMW 5 Series, for example, it goes out of fashion very, very quickly. So making something more conservative and timeless made more sense for this company which can't afford heavy research and development fees like the likes of Mercedes, BMW, Ford, all of those can. Now, coming with the interior, this is where this car as a luxury car would seem to fall apart, but the company got very lucky in terms of styling here. So when you get into the interior of this car, it's very plasticky and it doesn't feel very upmarket, but because of the layout and the central dash and the way the steering wheel and controls are designed, and the seats are very elegant looking, they look a lot like this seat actually. It just looks very slick and minimal. Now, they were lucky because at the time, you've got to remember, when they were designing this, it was around the time that the iPhone had launched. I think the iPhone 4 would have been coming out would have been the iPhone 4S, I think, in 2012. Don't quote me on that. But sleek and minimal were a thing that were set out by Apple, and Apple were very trendy at saying less is more. So it turns out that they were in the right place at the right time to produce a luxury car with that less is more attitude, so it still stood up. So you couldn't say, well, the Mercedes has all this gizmos and gadgets. It's like, okay, well, we have all this in the center console. It was lucky timing for them and it worked out. And also the center console design with just an entire giant screen just put it years ahead of everyone else, because it took a long time for everyone else to kind of catch on that was the simpler and better and more efficient way to go. In terms of technology as well, this car was incredibly clever, had a lot of ways for it to tell the people back at the factory that there was something wrong with the car. So their head office would know there's something wrong with your car before you did, which means they could call you up and say, hey, Tom, we're going to come and collect your car and we'll drop you a loaner car, fix it and drop it back to you. So their customer service was able to be way ahead of everyone else. And of course, they were rolling out their supercharger network. So it didn't go quite flawlessly, but this car was way ahead of everyone else, and this gave Tesla the massive lead that it, fortunately for them and unfortunately for the likes of the other big companies out there, they still have today. Now, if you're a Tesla fan but you've no interest in the science of electric cars, you can probably do this right now. I'm kidding, I'm not going to go too much into it, but if you're wondering how this car was powered, it was powered by an induction motor, which coincidentally 100 years before Nikola Tesla had invented. So essentially the way that works, and to explain that really quickly, I'm going to have to go to the battery. So the batteries in this car are not unlike a lithium-ion rechargeable battery that you can buy in a shop and recharge over and over again. I don't know if you remember from when we were kids, you used to buy the little 4-unit electric battery charger and put them in. The batteries are very, very similar to that. Now, they're much more advanced and they hold their power and can be recharged a lot longer, but they're essentially the same thing. So in this Tesla Model S in 2012, 7,104 of these batteries were put both in parallel in boxes and then in serial across these, and that provided power, bringing the car up to nearly a 300-mile range, which was incredible in 2012. Keep in mind, 2003, 10 years before, the EV1 that was scrapped had a 120-mile range, and some cars that other companies were delivering even in 2018, 2019 couldn't match this range. So this was really, really good. Now, that power was then delivered into an induction motor, and really quickly, the way an induction motor works is there is a motor inside with a casing around it. There's a name for that casing, but I am not an engineer, and essentially the motor inside has a lot of rods around it, I think it is, or poles around it, and essentially they react to magnetic force. So by passing alternating current onto different parts of these rods, the rotor inside would react to the magnet and turn. So when it's direct current, it would sit still. When you put your foot on the gas, it would change the alternating current so that it would start to spin, and by amplifying that alternating current quicker, it would turn faster and then slower, depending on that. Is essentially how it's powered. Now, the more interesting part of this is the power figures, which I'm going to get from my laptop right now because I've forgotten. Now, the power figures of the original car are nothing in comparison to what we have now with the P100D and all of the ludicrous mode and everything else that's been added. But the original car had 362 horsepower with 340 pound-feet of torque, I believe it was, with a 5.6 second 0 to 60. That was very, very quick for a luxury sedan that can technically seat 5 adults and 2 children at the time. Now, there was also a performance version which had 412 horsepower with 460 pound-feet of torque, and that would do it in a mind-blistering 4.4 seconds. Now these figures don't sound like a lot when you compare them to the current Model S, which the P100D in ludicrous mode will do it in 2.3 seconds, which is Lamborghini territory. But this was the first real mass production luxury sedan, and for $85,000 to $100,000 it really was one of the fastest things you could buy that wouldn't also kill every polar bear you passed on your drive to work. So going back to my original point, no, this car hasn't officially killed the internal combustion engine, but with the ongoing pandemic that we're sitting through at the minute that you might have forgotten about unless you live in America, it seems that it's on its way, and most companies now, including Honda for example, they're not going to research combustion engines anymore. So it seems like the combustion engines that we have today are really the peak of what we're going to get outside of the supercar market. I'm sure there will always be a market for enthusiasts to get combustion engine cars, but what I mean by that is 95% of the cars on the road will be electric in the next 5, 10, 15 years. Now I reckon in the next 5 years we're going to see that they'll stop making brand new internal combustion engine internal combustion engine mass production cars in the next 5 years, but it'll take a while to trickle down because not everyone buys new cars, and the used car market will take 5 to 10 years for that to adapt to everybody and be feasible. But it seems like it's on the way, and the Model 3 was the best-selling car in California, the first time an electric car was ever the best-selling car in California in March. So all of the other automakers during this time of difficulty are taking heed, and pretty much all of them are moving electric, and that's just the way it's going. So the Model 3 and Model Y perhaps are going to be the real catalyst towards moving everybody over much quicker than maybe the traditional car companies can. But my point was, I think this was the car that was the turning point, because before this we had the GM EV1, which was scrapped, and again you can watch in the video above. We had the Tesla Roadster, which I'll do a video on at some point, but those were again enthusiast or small production test vehicles. This was the first car that was really produced en masse. It was an electric car that just got into the psyche of people, and love it or hate it, it's changed the way cars will be forever. And I think this is a good thing, especially for us performance junkies, because there's only so much further we can go on combustion engines, and electric cars really are much more capable of going faster, better for the environment, I know, but that's the way it is. So thank you so much for sticking around. If you did until this point, thank you for watching, and if you enjoyed this video, please do give me a like and subscribe. I would really appreciate it. There's going to be videos every Tuesday and Thursday, and then I'm thinking of doing some Formula 1 stuff and maybe some new stuff, but don't quote me on that. I have quite a busy life outside of this YouTube thing, and sorry for the delay for 3 weeks. I went on a much needed break. Thank you again for watching. I'll see you on Tuesday for the next video, or potentially before then if something comes out, but probably not because it's mental busy. Thank you again. Talk to you soon. Keep driving. It's a terrible tagline.